Ultimately, we can't do our jobs, we can't do our calling, we can't do our passion unless we can reach the people who we can help.
Hi, I'm Enoch Sears,
Hi, I'm Eric Fabro.
and this is the Architect Marketing Show, the show about getting more good clients for your architecture practice.
Welcome. Glad you could join us.
I also, Eric, am very glad to welcome all of our listeners today. And first of all, Eric, just wanted to start out chatting about what this show is all about. I know from my side, I'm really excited for what we're doing here because I know that this is available on YouTube. It's also available on iTunes as well as on our website, architects with an S, marketing.com. And we're going to be sharing excellent information, like we mentioned, about how architects can find more good projects and attract those kind of clients to their firms. So I thought we'd just start out talking, Eric, about why the show, why we started this. What's our purpose here with the Architect Marketing Show?
I think it dates back to some of our early conversations where you asked me a question and I sort of improvised an answer, and you said, that was really good. We should record that. And we realized, I've been enjoying our repartee back and forth. We've just got so much that we've been learning, working on, experimenting, and testing out that most architects really don't know about and could really benefit from.
Absolutely. So just a little background on what you're talking about, Eric. We have a business where we help architects with their websites and with online marketing in particular, but also in marketing in a larger sense. And I do marketing for my blog, my website, businessofarchitecture.com. Eric, and you have a background that we'll be talking about a little bit too in marketing. And so, like you mentioned, I've really enjoyed our internal dialogue. We're really absorbing a lot of the cutting edge information about what's happening in marketing there, and just thinking about how can we give this to other people? How can we present it in a way so that they can be sort of the fly on the wall listening to these conversations and learning from them?
Yeah, I think that from all of my architect clients over the years, I've seen that there's a real gap in terms of understanding, and people are hungry for it, and really it can make such a huge difference. And some of the people who've implemented some of these strategies have been able to grow their business, come out of the slow period into a point where they can really pick and choose what clients they want to work with. It's really been very satisfying.
Excellent. And I know, Eric, that we're not just speculating on these things, because I know we have case studies we'll be going over, giving examples of architects we've worked with and architects that we know of that have implemented these strategies and are getting real results. So, we're actually on the front lines. We're experimenting with these things on a daily basis, and I think that we're going to come up with some pretty cool examples of what people are doing.
Yeah, I'm really excited what we're going to be sharing. So how's this going to be structured, Enoch? Tell us.
Well, so we're gonna have. I think we've outlined about 5 episodes, Eric, and I've come up with a basic outline, and you looked at it, and it looks like we're pretty good to go for those 5 different episodes. And first of all, wanted to talk about who this show is for, right? Because people may be tuning in for the first time. Who is our audience? Who are we speaking to? Because we're not speaking to everyone. This is only going to be interested to a small select portion of the 6 billion people on the earth. So maybe, Eric, if you could just tell from your point of view who you're wanting this to get out to, and who is going to find this information most useful.
I think that anyone who is involved as an architect in a small office, firm owner primarily, if you're responsible for bringing in business, if your livelihood depends upon having more clients and better projects to work on, that's what this show is about. We'll be sharing things that could be applied to larger firms, could be applied to other industries, and certainly can be easily applied to design firms that maybe if you're not a licensed architect but you're doing similar work, it'll definitely apply. But mainly to architects with the one person or the small office under 5 or 10 people.
Absolutely. And I'd also add to that, architects who are thinking about going out on their own would be another group who this information is going to be very useful for, so that before you put up your shingle, so to speak, or go out there on your own, you can already have a solid marketing plan in place. So we have startup firms who are just starting out. Eric, you mentioned we have other firms that are more established, so people who are responsible for bringing in the work. Anyone else we're leaving out of the mix that we think this is targeted for?
Well, I think if you're a marketing consultant and you want to work with architects, you'll probably learn a few things that'll help you, help your clients.
Excellent. Now, what about residential architects versus business-to-business architects? Because both you and I know that the strategies for those two different kind of architects are different. You have business-to-business, which would be architects who are pursuing government and civic projects, versus business-to-consumer, architects that may be marketing themselves to maybe restaurants or commercial business owners, or residential architects who market themselves to homeowners.
I think that the strategies that we'll be talking about apply on a broad range, but probably are best when they're working with where you're speaking directly to the people who are going to make the decision. The homeowner or the couple who are going to be making the decision, who are going to be finding an architect and choosing one. But it does apply certainly when you're talking to another business or organization, as long as you're reaching the person who has the authority to make that decision, because that's the one that you want to motivate and educate to be interested in your work and to see you as a valuable resource for their potential project.
Yep, exactly. And I know we'll be giving a lot of examples, Eric, because we do work with smaller firms of 15 and smaller, and sole practitioners. So I know a lot of the examples and case studies and things we'll be going over will be those type of firms. But like you mentioned, someone from a larger firm who's in a business development role, or even people who aren't architects, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good information here. So talking about why is marketing important and how can marketing help people? Eric, let's talk a little bit about the pain points, or let's say what are the symptoms of an architecture firm that does not have a good marketing plan in place? What are the things that they can look at in their business and identify, hey, I need to do some better marketing. Let's just talk for a minute about some of those things.
I think probably the most common thing is just not having enough work coming in, enough inquiries to be able to be confident about, having work next month or 3 months from now, and also not being able to pick and choose because you feel like you better take any work that comes along. Those are two symptoms that I think we all can relate to. If you can't pick and choose, then you end up possibly taking on projects that aren't ideal. And if you're always worrying because you don't have a plan, if you don't have a marketing plan, then there's definitely ways to help that.
Absolutely. And so I think you touched on two very interesting things, Eric, there. And so the first thing brings to my mind the idea of a steady flow of clients. When you say there's not enough work coming in, so what we're talking about there is that the firm is always on the hunt for the next project, as opposed to being able to relax a little bit in terms of the outward pushing sort of business development and have the steady flow set up of leads that are coming in the door. And then the second thing you mentioned is interesting because that also ties into the strategic aspect of things, right? So you said if an architecture firm, if you're forced to take a project because you need to pay the bills or you need to pay the employees, and you just take any project that comes in the door, that's going to ultimately hurt your strategic ability of your firm to get where you want to be, wherever that is. Maybe you want to do work that's a little bit more interesting. Maybe you want to work for developers or people who are willing to pay higher fees, and maybe that's a misnomer to even throw developers into that category. But the idea of being able to, a strategic plan. So, Eric, one thing that I've thought about a lot is I look at architects who have been able to have the high design work, which I know a lot of architects, when we go through school, we aspire to design work that's interesting, that's fun, that's creative. And somewhere along the line, those of us who aspire to that kind of architecture, we get burned out when we have to work on projects that we see are less than creative or not fully allowing us to be, kind of the creative architects that we like to be. And so there's different ways I've seen people deal with that. One way is that there's almost a process of rationalization or maybe a realization of the joy and beauty of helping people have utilitarian solutions. So not everything needs to be an award-winning design. But going back to the strategic part of it, is that the only place you get there, whether it's doing great design or whether it's earning larger fees or kind of having a flexible schedule, is being able to follow some sort of strategy and not just blindly kind of accepting every project that comes in the door.
Yeah, I think strategic planning and actually sort of making an effective process out of this is going to make a big difference. And one of the things you haven't mentioned that is a pain that I see so often is the how do you compete? How do you win when you do get inquiries? Are you competing based on I can do it cheaper? You know, not a winning strategy. Temporarily, I mean, you may have to do that from time to time, but overall, that's not something you want to rely on because ultimately it's a race to the bottom. Who can do it cheapest becomes a race to who can go out of business by, essentially not making enough to make ends meet, as well as losing the satisfaction of, just working and feeling like it's not worth it. So I think we're going to be talking about how you can position yourself so that you can actually command higher fees, get people to recognize that you have some unique competitive advantage or a unique position in the market for what you offer, and therefore they're going to be seeking you out rather than you having to chase after them.
Yeah, and I know that we work with Eric. I know we work with architects that fall into both camps. The architects who have set themselves up to where price is not a primary consideration in terms of the business that they do. They're able to charge premium fees, and the clients basically know they have to play by their rules. And then there's another camp of architects who, for whatever reason, and those are the reasons we're going to be talking about, like you said, feel forced into competing on price or feel like they're a commodity, feel like when they put out the proposal or when people call them, the people, the prospective clients are just price shopping, and that is painful. I mean, I'm an architect. I've been through that. It's awkward. It doesn't feel good. After all the time we spend going to school and, a very competitive process to get in school, then to get out and to have people almost viewing us as used car salesmen, when they're sort of price shopping. It's tough to swallow.
Yeah, so I think we've got some great ideas and tactics and overall strategies that you and I have worked through that really help to position an architecture firm where you don't have to worry about price as the primary consideration. In fact, it recedes. It becomes almost trivial where people are saying, I don't care how much you cost, you've got what I need.
I'm getting excited, Eric. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Now, another thing, too, that people might be experiencing is I'm out there, I do good work, but people just don't know I exist. Mm-hmm. And I know that when I started researching marketing for architects, Eric, the only information I could find was basically people saying, get out there and network, get out there in the community. And, of course, that is an excellent strategy. And you need to be doing that. And we'll, of course, talk about the most effective ways to network. But it seemed like there had to be a quicker way to do it because, to me, that was a very slow way to build up a practice. One by one, handshake by handshake. I mean, that could take a large amount of time, especially if you don't know which groups to go to. Building a good network can take 5 years or more. And so one thing that I was looking at is, okay, how can I short circuit this process? How can I let people know I exist? And so that's one problem that people have is that they're out there and they have a small network, but there's a lot of other people who may need those services who just don't even know that they exist. They don't know where to find them.
Yeah, so I think that you and I have, of course, embraced the internet and online tools for being able to be visible, to be found, to be discovered at just the right times, and to be remembered through regular contact through digital tools. So these aren't the only ways, but they are certainly very effective tools and strategies that every architect should add to their marketing plan. I think, and the networking idea, of course, is essential, but going beyond that to the referral network. In other words, it's one thing you can meet people who say, oh, I've been looking for someone like you. It's another thing when you can be in touch with people who are connected so that they refer you to be published in magazines or to be contacted by potential clients. So people like real estate agents who potentially could refer remodel jobs to you because they're selling a house that needs some work, and they can assure their client that we've got this great architect who could just make this kitchen so beautiful, and the rest of the house is great. So how can you build up that network beyond just the direct people you meet, but to be a referral source and a stream of steady inquiries?
Yes, and how do you motivate those people? I know that's one thing, Eric, we're going to be talking about is how do you reach out to these partners? You mentioned real estate agents, how do you approach them? What is the pitch, so to speak, or what is how do you get them to basically refer you? And so we're going to be talking about strategies like that. Now, Eric, did we leave anything out? I mean, I'm sure there's more things we could talk about the difficulties of or the symptoms of not having a marketing system in place. I think we've talked about price shopping, we've talked about commoditization, we've talked about having to constantly chase jobs and not having that steady flow. We've talked about not having a strategic plan. So the long-term consequences of not doing good marketing. Anything else, Eric, that comes to mind?
Well, I think uh, always chasing sort of the flip side of that is having something that's working while you sleep, while working behind the scenes, the automated or ongoing machine that promotes your work. So I think with most people, most architects, and many businesses, if you're not actively promoting, if you're not actively out there, then your business starts to dry up. And there are ways to be able to focus on your design work, but have systems in place that continually are exposing you to new potential clients. And that's, I think, part of what we've discovered can be so effective.
And Eric, you did mention the word promoting, and of course we're talking about marketing here. I'm curious to those people listening, what kind of reaction you have to those kind of words, because I've definitely found that initially me as an architect, and also as I've talked to other architects, that art and promotion are almost like oil and water. And I don't know where that belief comes from. I don't know where the belief comes from that, because something's art, it can't, somehow it's diminished by being promoted or being spread. But what we want to do, Eric, I think if I can, summarize here, is basically we want you to be able to, you listeners, our audience, to be able to serve as many people as you can. So you have great art, you're doing great things. We want to give you the ability to put that in their hands.
Yeah, I think that you have to recognize that you are in business. In fact, Enoch and I, we are all in business, and business relies on being visible, which means you have to promote or market to be seen and to be recognized as a good resource. And ultimately, we can't do our jobs, we can't do our calling, we can't do our passion unless we can reach the people who we can help. And so it really has to be seen not as selling something that's a thing, but really being able to offer valuable services to people who just would love to have you as the architect, people who otherwise might not know about you if you didn't get out there. So I think that puts it in a little different perspective.
Absolutely, Eric. And I know we're going to be talking about ethical promotion, ethical selling, as opposed to sleazy selling. And we're going to be talking about the differences and how that applies. So in terms of what are the benefits, Eric, of having a marketing system in place to doing good ethical marketing? What are the benefits that a firm, let's talk about that for a minute, the benefits that a firm or a person is going to get if they have this automated system in place?
Well, I think that you'll be seen by more people, more companies if you're working B2B, with other businesses, and therefore the right people will find you. So it won't be as much of a hunt as just having exposure. And it means that you're going to get a steady flow of inquiries rather than just an occasional one here and there. And you'll be able to then carefully pick out the jobs and the clients that would be best for you and your practice.
Great. So in terms of a good marketing system, there's going to be steady leads that come in. And then because of the increased leads or the increased prospective clients, that it's going to give firms the ability to take on or turn away projects based upon whether they necessarily want to work with that person or want to do that kind of project. And
Absolutely.
let's see, another thing that would be a symptom of you have a good marketing system when you find, like Eric said, when you find that clients are coming to you and they already know who you are, they recognize you as an expert, and not only that, but you're the only one they want to work with. So I'm curious if anyone here, listening, please come in. We want to make this a dialogue. We're going to encourage lots of participation in the show notes and the comments below this show that you can find on architectsmarketing.com. And basically the idea is, are you personally in the position where when people come to you, they know that you're the person that they want to work with, and you sort of left all the competition in the dust? That's something that can be very powerful, Eric, I know, is creating almost like a virtual monopoly. I hate to use that word because I get the antitrust lawyers out there. But the idea that you've made yourself so different that when people call you and when they come to you, they know that they want to work with you, and that sure, they're going to negotiate the price, but that's not the primary consideration that they're thinking about.
Yeah, I think that's a great position to be in, and we've seen some of our clients move into that preeminent position where they become the prize. And instead of them having to chase after potential clients, the clients are saying, will you allow me to work with, to hire you?
Absolutely. And one person that comes to mind is Peter Toohey. Maybe we can mention him a little bit later and share his story. He's one person that has experienced that change in his business.
Mm-hmm.
Just throw that
Absolutely.
teaser out there. Another thing that I know that having one of these marketing systems in place, Eric, that can benefit people is being able to, like you said, go on vacation, being able to go to sleep at night and know that there are systems out there that are working to turn strangers into good clients.
I think that's what we all want, is something that works while we sleep. I mean, it's not that you don't work or that you don't put in the effort, but you set up systems that can actually function without you having to sort of turn the crank all the time.
And Eric, the last thing I have here in my notes about the benefits of having a good marketing system in place is that clients will want to work with you, and I sort of mentioned this before, but clients will want to work with you because of you, specifically because of who you are. Not just because they found your name in a phone book somewhere, not even because someone referred you, although that is wonderful, but specifically because they know about your unique qualities and about what you offer. And that's sort of the opposite of being price shopped. That's a lot more ennobling. I think that lays the foundation for a better relationship when someone, they know who you are and they want to work with you because there's an understanding of the value that you create. So that would be, I think that was the last thing sort of I had brainstormed, Eric, about the benefits of putting together a good marketing system, which is what this whole entire show is going to be talking about in future episodes as well. So, yeah. Eric, any other comments about that?
What are we going to be talking about as we move forward? I think we've laid out who this is for, what sort of pains or problems that we feel are so important to address, and some of the benefits that you can get when you actually learn and implement, strategies that are effective for marketing. So I know you've laid out a whole series of the next few episodes. We're going to be developing this on an ongoing basis, but the next few episodes, tell us about what we're going to be sharing.
You bet. So I figured we could. I know you have the outline there too, Eric. Maybe we could go back and forth between the different points. But this is episode 1, so this is the introduction to the show, telling you kind of what you're going to be looking for, what you're going to be in for as you subscribe to the show. And the second episode, next episode, we're going to dive right into the very beginning of, let's say you're starting from scratch. Okay, say we're going to assume that you don't have any marketing plan. We're going to assume that all you've relied upon in the past is word of mouth, which is great. But we're going to add to that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, now this sounds really dry, but it's actually, we're going to make it exciting, right, Eric? But the market research. So when I say dry, I always think of market research, it just wants me to go to sleep. But the idea that we're getting at here is, who do you want to serve? It starts getting exciting when you think about what is your passion, what is the line between, pursuing your passion in architecture, pursuing what makes money? I mean, there's a lot of paths that architects can go down as they're choosing what market they want to serve. So our next episode, we're going to talk about how do you choose a market focus, the benefits and disadvantages of going one route versus the other, how to find a need in the market, and not only that, but how to find people who are willing to pay for what you're offering.
Sounds
So,
good.
yeah, so that's going to be episode one. How do you know that you're serving the people you want to serve so that strategically in the long term, you're going to be where you want to be 10, 20 years down the line? So that's episode one. And like Eric said, this is flexible. This is a rough outline, but we're going to try to stick to these points as best we can. And the future shows, of course, we're going to bring in additional content. So Eric, do you have anything to add on that? And you can talk about episode two, I guess.
No, I think you summarized it well. I think episode 2 will focus on the positioning. Basically, how do you establish yourself as the go-to resource in a particular area, your geographic area for a particular type of project, remodel or new, or a sustainable design, or kitchens, or restaurants. How do you establish yourself as a resource rather than just one of many potential design firms that people could contract with? And it's an interesting challenge because I think so many of us say, well, someone else could do the job just as well as me. And of course, there is truth there, but how can you set up and sort of create a position in the market that's legitimate in terms of being helpful, expert, caring, the sorts of things that maybe other people aren't focusing on. In other words, they're saying, we have 25 years experience, but does that say that they have a good process? Does that say that they help go over certain design challenges or problems or experience with certain types of issues in the local community code, all sorts of things? What things make you special that allow you to command a higher fee because you can get approvals when other people can't, or your jobs just go on schedule when others have problems with that? I mean, what things do you have that are part of your passion and just you do it better than most? And how can you establish that as a criteria? Like, I wouldn't want to work with anyone if they can't guarantee that we'll meet the schedule, because I've just had too many projects go south because it's taken an extra 2 months to get something done. And if that's your strong point, make that a position that people value and say, God, I wouldn't want to go with somebody else because they don't have that track record for this important part.
And Eric, that is such an important part. And I know that, the first couple episodes we're talking about here, when I said earlier that it's the boring part, what I meant by that is that we're laying the foundation here, is that a lot of times when people think about marketing, they tend to jump to the flashier, more exciting things, actually bringing the clients, sending out the material, making contact with people. But the real foundational success is all set in the first part before that ever happens. And that's what we're talking about now. The actual research, the positioning. And positioning is just so important. When you look at some of the world's most successful and profitable companies, they have superb positioning.
Let's just very briefly mention the other topics that we've got sketched out, because there's going to be a lot for us to share during each one of them. I know next one after this one would be educating your clients. And I'll just say briefly, why is that important? Because a lot of clients don't understand the value of what each of us offers. They just, if they're price shopping, it's because they see architects as providing the same services. How do you educate them to the value of an architect, say, compared to some other lower cost service, a drafter or contractor, just providing drawings for the job? How do you educate them to the importance of good design and the process that you go through? And how can you be seen as an expert rather than just a provider of a service?
Yep. And so that would be episode 3. Episode 4, we're going to be talking about how do you establish authority cultivate relationships, and get the projects. So of course, after you have identified the people you want to serve, after you've identified how you want to be perceived in the minds of the people who you're serving, and after you've put out some material to educate them about who you are, once they come in the door, how do you then turn that person into a client? What's the process? How do you handle that new project inquiry? How do you make sure that that you reinforce the idea that you're an authority, that you're the person who they want to work with? And that's going to be an entire episode there, episode number 4. Or actually, I guess that'll be episode number 5.
Right. And then the next one after that, we'll be talking about how do you manage the process when you're designing, when you're actually working with a client and getting a project done. How do you make sure that they have such an extraordinary experience that they want to refer you, that they want to tell their friends or their colleagues about, do you know what this firm did? Do you know what this architect did? How can you provide a remarkable experience that makes them want to share that? There are some interesting little tricks that you can do. They're not tricks in the sense that they're bad, but they're just sort of little things that you can do that can make such a huge difference in their experience.
Absolutely. And I think the point we're talking about here also, Eric, is that marketing is not only what happens before people meet you, but it's also what happens as they're interacting with you, and even after they're no longer a client, no longer have a job going on, but there's still marketing that happens after the fact. And so that's what that episode that Eric just mentioned, which is number 6, is going to be talking about, which is after the project is done, how do you manage that process and make sure that this thing is a continual system? So Eric, I think we've kind of mapped out the different episodes we're going to have, kind of roughly, and I look forward to all that content, that we're going to be sharing. Anything else about this show that we want to tell our listeners about?
Well, I think that we're going to be continuing to provide interesting, useful educational content through this show, and as well, we'll be providing other opportunities for you to learn and to work with us. So we'll be sharing those as we move forward. I think there's a lot that we've got mapped out, some of which we'll sort of keep, sort of under our jacket here for the moment, but we'll be revealing in due time.
Now, Eric, do we want to talk all about the training that we're going to be having? So along with this show, we will be having trainings and other opportunities for people to learn more.
Absolutely. I think that'll be something that we'll be sharing soon. Do you want to say a few things now before we finish up?
Well, yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to go to architectsmarketing.com. That's sort of going to be the hub for all the information we're sharing. We definitely want to make that a discussion point, and in future episodes, we want to be able to take listener questions. We want to do case studies. We want to give you personal feedback on ideas about how you can grow your practice, and make this more of an interactive show in addition to sharing what we've learned, but also learning the things that you're seeing out there in the fields and in the trenches. And I know, Eric, that you and I have just gotten done with Richard Petrie from running an Architects Marketing Academy, where we took 9 select architects through an intensive marketing system to help them set up the system in their business. And so some of the things that we'll be sharing are kind of insights that we learned through going through that process. So we have a lot to share, and I'm excited. Eric, it's awesome to be doing the show with you.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a nice journey together. You and I and all of our audience members look forward to sharing it with you.
That's right. All right, Eric, over and out.
All right. Take care. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for joining us for the inaugural episode of the Architect Marketing Show. 2 quick notes. Go grab a free account on architectsmarketing.com. That's architects with an S, to stay in the loop about the resources and training we'll be sharing, and to get updates about the latest episodes. Once again, that's architectsmarketing.com. And secondly, if you want to be the most popular architect in the room, send your architect friends to architectsmarketing.com so they won't miss out on learning how they can get off the treadmill of chasing clients through ethical and fun marketing. And And don't forget to leave us your comments about the show on Architects Marketing.